And welcome everybody to another episode of Tidal Flooding Talk, brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition in conjunction with our broadcast partners at Tri-X 57 right here at the Jersey Shore. We have another episode for you where we go away from New Jersey to talk about what's happening with coastal resiliency, or maybe the lack thereof. We'll find that out in just a minute here. But we are chatting here in mid-August. Dan, mid-August seems pretty good to me. I've been liking it. The water's been super warm. I mean, our guests from Florida won't think it's super warm, but it's been like in the mid to the upper 70s for like weeks.
It's all relative. Mid to upper 70s consistently in New Jersey is kind of like, 90-degree water in Florida, right? I mean, it's
Right.
it's toasty for the mid-Atlantic coast. We're enjoying that. It was a comfy start to August. Heat humidity building back now since it is still summer. And the clock is ticking to Labor Day, so it's a time of year where people really want to soak in that warm water, soak in the heat humidity, which can sometimes, fade pretty quickly beyond Labor Day.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, at Atlantic City International Airport, we had the coldest start to August on record going back to 1944 through the 12th of the month. We went 12 straight days below average. And when you averaged all that out, it was the coldest start to the month. So that was actually pretty interesting. Palma, did you like this? I know you're a fall person. I'm assuming you liked the first couple of days of August here in New Jersey.
Well, I do enjoy like summer weather. I think, I do like the heat in the summer. And honestly, the water temp in the 70s is still way too cold for me. So maybe
I
I
think
should
we can all
visit
agree on that.
Florida to
Right.
hop in the ocean. But no, I look forward to the fall, but I also really do enjoy the summer months too. So I'm trying to enjoy the last few weeks of summer and get out as much as possible.
All right, absolutely. And let's go to our friends here at the Land of Endless Summer. I love that license plate with the surfboard and the sun, and it says Endless Summer on there. We see a lot of them in New Jersey this time of the year, with all the snowbirds. But we have Alex Harris from the Miami Herald. She is back with us. She is now a recurring guest. And we have Ryan Balog from the Bradenton Herald. They worked together on a piece back in May about a Florida Senate Bill 180. That was signed. That would block communities from really rebuilding stronger after hurricanes. We're going to talk to him about what the rationale was for behind this and the impacts. But first, I have to ask the hard-hitting questions. Do you guys even go in the water when it's in the 70s in Florida? Or is you guys like, now I'll wait a couple of months till it warms up in like April or something?
Way too cold. Got to be at least 80. But it stays 80 through December and January. So the beach
Wow.
season lasts pretty far.
Yeah. Same thing in the Gulf, right, Ryan? It's even warmer in the Gulf. It's at times.
Yeah, I sadly I kind of avoid the beach. I was actually just up in Canada and I was swimming in some lakes up there, and I don't mind the cold water. It's very nice.
Okay. Well, maybe you and Palma can trade places, with the water temp. You can come back up to Jersey. We'll be in the 50s soon, in 40s and 30s soon enough. I like the eye roll there, Alex. All right, down to business here. So obviously, like we said, we have a bill that went through in Florida. Especially after all the hurricanes we saw last year, Milton, being one of them, of course. Just give us like the elevator pitch of your story that you can that everyone can read in Bradenton Herald or Miami Herald, and then we'll start asking some more in-depth questions. But what's like the top level summary of this?
Alex, you want to take that away?
Yeah, so SB 180 is a bill that has a lot of good stuff in it. It really streamlines recovery processes. It includes extra training for first responders and emergency managers in local communities. There's a lot of really good stuff that people were really excited about. The problem is there's a couple sentences in there that some local governments see as a poison pill. They basically say that if your county has been hit by a hurricane, or if it gets hit by a hurricane in the future, any sort of emergency is declared there, you are not allowed for 2 years afterwards to add any new rebuilding practices that would be considered burdensome or restrictive. And if a developer finds the new practices you've add are burdensome or restrictive, they can sue the county. So that is really creating a situation where local governments say is having unintended consequences, or perhaps intended, depends on who you ask, where local governments are unable to make even really basic changes, like the setback between a property and the wetlands, or impact fees, or a new stormwater plan to make drainage easier or better in some communities. They're getting rolled back because by the letter of this law, it's considered a big change in the years after a hurricane. So people are nervous that, especially with the recurring clause in here, which is that this bill re-ups every single time there's a hurricane, that communities in Florida that are constantly getting walloped, which is a lot of us a lot of the time, could be stuck in a permanent state of you can't improve your building code. And if you try, you're going to get sued.
There's a lot with that bill. And Palma, you know, being our building expert here in Margate, we were talking a little bit off camera, and she had some emotions, I guess, on this. Do you want to go, Palma, as far as, you know, what your thoughts are on this?
Yeah, I mean, I can see where it would be challenging because local codes, you know, there's different types, whether it's state regulations or city regulations, and then there's also international codes. So it's tough to see how a bill could kind of dictate how the whole state is going to develop. And I guess I would also wonder, like, does this affect like just private homeowners too, like redeveloping their own property, or is it more on like grand scale projects?
It's more of a grand scale thing. Think about the issue of like a community having a comprehensive development master plan, which says the houses here can be up to 3 stories. The houses here need to have a certain amount of setback before you hit the street, or you can have this many trees in your property, or you have to pass a law to cut them down. We're talking those kind of things. This law isn't going to impact homeowners' ability to rebuild. In fact, some of the things in this law could make it easier for individual property owners to rebuild after a storm, some of the streamlining and cutting of red bureaucratic tape that I mentioned earlier. So individual homeowners might see some changes they like when it comes to recovery from a storm, but local governments who are trying to make changes, not at the state level, not at the federal level, not at the international code level, but just we as a community have decided this area floods a lot. Maybe we want to ask people to hold more stormwater on their property, design so they can hold more rain. That's the kind of stuff that we're hearing from local counties that this bill would block them from doing. I don't know, Ryan, if you have anything to add to that, of what you've already seen in Manatee County getting blocked by this.
Yeah, I would say one example, for instance, is we have, you know, we're a county of about 450,000 people right now. It's been growing extremely rapidly to the point where the infrastructure isn't necessarily keeping up with all the new development and growth. And the county wants to put back this basically development boundary where they say you can't do large scale development past this point out east because we don't have the infrastructure to support that yet. And they're being blocked by this bill because they're saying that's more burdensome or restrictive than what you already have on the books. So it's really affecting the future of how local governments are able to plan their communities.
Very, very interesting. What I want to do is I have a question, but I do want to take a break. So we're going to take a brief break. Then the other side, we'll get more into this with Alex Harris and Ryan Balog about what's going on in Florida and coastal resiliency. And we are back. We are continuing our conversation about the Senate Bill 180 that was signed into law in Florida over the summer relating to building back after hurricanes. This could be for either you, Ryan, or Alex here. So I don't know, is this the way to think about it? I mean, you said the bill, Alex, had a lot of good things in there, right, regarding to building back better. At the same time, is it from the state's perspective or from the Senate's perspective, some of those things that you just mentioned, is that from the standpoint of saying, hey, we don't want the local community, we don't want a patchwork of different laws here. We want this to be one uniform law for the state of Florida. Would that be the rationale for that? Or is it just something completely different?
That's a really good question. And that's actually something that Ryan and I set out to answer when we wrote that story. We're like, okay, we're hearing a lot of complaints, right? Planning groups, communities, they're all really upset about this, but there's got to be a good reason that the legislators originally wrote this law. So we talked to both. I talked to one, he talked to the other, the sponsor in the House and the Senate, and both of them told us they had no idea. No one had ever mentioned to them that there was any unintended consequences. There could be any unintended consequences with this change, but they both talked about overregulation. They both specifically mentioned that sometimes they were worried that after a storm, communities might say, well, they brought up all the hypotheticals, right? Like after a storm, a community may say, hey, pause on building in this storm hit area. Let's just not do any new development there for a year or two and see where things land. They were really worried about that being an issue. But I mean, Ryan can tell you, we never really found a specific example of something that they were upset about that they were trying to block. It was more like a hypothetical. It's kind of what we kept hearing from them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Alex, right. I mean, I guess my question would be that, you know, when communities get hit by a storm, and we use it all the time when we got hit by Irene and Sandy in New Jersey, you learn lessons and you mold new, you know, laws, you mold new building codes from those lessons that these storms teach you. This bill is recently enacted in Florida now, kind of prevents that, right? So you could have a community hit hard. You want to implement these changes based on what happened in the storm. And this bill kind of prevents communities from doing that for up to 2 years after a hurricane hit. That's correct. And then Florida gets hit by so many hurricanes that you may actually have a moratorium for, you know, you get hit by one storm, and 2 years later you get by another storm. So it could literally be years to maybe a decade before any laws on a local basis can change. Is that correct?
That's exactly the nightmare scenario that we heard over and over and over again from local governments. There is, I think Palma brought this up earlier, it's a good point. Florida has really great building codes after a storm, and they get updated every 3 years. So this is a different screw you can use to hold your roof in better, or this type of impact window is better than the other ones, and you should use this one. Those kind of changes will still happen. This bill doesn't appear like it's going to block any of those changes, which already kind of roll out on a regular basis. But when it comes to the hyper local stuff, like, oh, we found out that this community floods really badly, and we'd like, you know, in the future when you build new homes, this neighborhood we got to be 1 foot up, or you have to have a more green space or something to soak up the water. Those kind of like, okay, this is a local community thing, not a statewide thing that only we would know because only our community experienced this storm. Those are the kind of changes that we're seeing critics really nervous about. And knock on wood, we haven't had a hurricane this year. And we're still expecting from NOAA a pretty active season in the next couple of months, but we could really see this get put to the test in the next couple of months. And I think Manatee County explicitly has been sort of leading the charge about it. And Ryan will tell you they're having a meeting next week to kind of say, we hate this bill and we want it to change.
Yeah, and to that point, they basically decided, hey, this bill is really bad, and if we don't stand up to it, who's going to? So they've decided that they're going to vote for a few changes, basically in defiance of this bill. On Thursday, they're holding a special meeting, and it's two things. They're going to vote to put back their wetland protections, which developers have tried to stop them from doing, citing this new law, and also put back their rural development area boundary, which was that boundary I was talking about earlier, because they feel like their infrastructure needs to catch up with all this new building after they had really severe flooding in last year's hurricanes. So,
Isn't
Now,
there?
do you feel that, oh, I'm sorry, Dan.
Oh, go ahead, Polly. Sorry.
Do you feel that after your conversations with the legislators that they may be open to making these changes now that they are maybe aware of these issues that they weren't made aware of prior to putting this law into effect?
at the time we talked to them, they said they would be open to potential changes if they see, problems with the law and practice. So we'll see whether that comes to pass or not. And we actually, Manatee and Pasco County and several other counties in Florida are joining together to basically request that the legislature take a look at how this law is